Hello everyone. I am going to discuss with you about the price elasticity of demand in this lecture, and defining the elasticity first. That PD, or price elasticity of demand, measures the responsiveness of demand for a product following a change in its own price. That whenever the price changes, how much change in the quantity of that product will occur. The formula for calculating the coefficient of elasticity of demand is percentage change in quantity demanded divided by the percentage change in price. So we measure the price elasticity of demand by using this formula, by dividing the percentage change in the quantity demanded with the percentage change by the percentage change in the price. So understanding values for price elasticity of demand. If price elasticity of demand is equal to 0, then demand is said to be perfectly inelastic. This means that demand does not change at all. When the price changes, the demand curve will be vertical. That whenever the price is changing, the quantity demanded is also, there is no change. So if the price elasticity of demand is 0, if our answer is 0, then the demand is said to be perfectly inelastic. This means that demand does not change at all when the price changes. The demand curve will be vertical line. And if price elasticity of demand is between 0 and 1, i.e. the percentage change in the demand for A to B is smaller than the percentage change in price, then demand is inelastic. Producers know that the change in demand will be proportionately smaller than the percentage change in price. So we call this one the perfectly inelastic, the inelastic demand. If the price elasticity of demand answer is equal to 1, the percentage change in demand is exactly the same as the percentage change in price, then demand is said to unit elastic. If 15% rise in price would lead to a 15% contraction or reduction in demand, leaving total spending by the same at each price level. Another type is the elastic demand. If the price elasticity of demand answer is greater than 1, then demand responds more than proportionately to a change in price. It means demand will change more than the price change. I, demand is elastic. For example, a 20% increase in price of a good might lead to a 30% drop in demand. The price elasticity of demand for this product is 1.5. What determines price elasticity of demand? What are the factors determining the price elasticity of demand? The demand for rail services, suppose, at peak times the demand for rail transport becomes inelastic, and higher prices are charged by rail companies who can then achieve higher revenues and profits. We can also observe the same situation during the Eid days, when people want to return to their homes from the big cities to their villages via trains or via coaches or any other mode of the transportation. At that time, whatever the price, even the higher prices they are not discouraging the people to travel. So peak times have the more impact. So at peak time, the demand for rail transport become inelastic, means even if the price changes, the demand will not change. Another factor is the number of close substitutes for a good, or the uniqueness of the product. Another factor which is determining whether the product is the elastic or inelastic demand is the availability of the substitutes or non-availability of the substitutes. The more close substitutes in the market, the more elastic is the demand for a product, because consumers can more easily switch their demand if the price of the product changes relative to others in the market. The huge range of packaged holidays, tours, and destinations make this a highly competitive market in terms of prices. Many holiday makers are price sensitive. Even if you can say that suppose in different mobiles, if one mobile's price changes, there are other alternates, so it will affect. Another, the cost of switching between different products. Another factor is also determining the elasticity of demand is the cost of switching between the different products. If it is costly to change from one to another, then people will avoid. There may be significant transaction cost involved in switching between different goods and services. In this case, demand tends to be relatively inelastic. For example, mobile phone service providers may include penalty clauses in contracts or insist on 12 months contracts being taken out. In some cases, some mobile or cellular networks, they have the contracts that people will use their SIMs. If they breach, they have to pay. So usually people avoid breaching the contracts because of the penalties. Another factor is which is determining the responsiveness of the product relative to the price is the degree of necessity or whether the good is a luxury. Whether the good is luxury or the necessity will determine the responsiveness of the product in terms of the price. Good and services deemed by consumers to be necessities tend to have an inelastic demand, whereas luxuries will tend to have a more elastic demand because consumers can make do without luxuries when their budgets are stressed. In an economic recession, we can cut back on discretionary items of spending. So if the good is luxury, when price rises, people avoid buying, but if the good is necessity, like the food, medicines, and other necessary items, the price changes does not affect the buyer's behavior. Another factor is the percentage of the income someone is spending on a particular product will also affect the responsiveness of the price of the good towards and the quantity. Goods and services that take up a high proportion of a household's income will tend to have a more elastic demand than the products where large price changes make little or no difference to someone's ability to purchase the product. It means the goods that take up a high proportion. Suppose we spend very little amount of our budget on the salt, monthly consumption of the salt. If the price of the salt increase by 20 or 30%, means hardly 5 rupees or 2 rupees or 3 rupees, it will be very little or no share of our salary. So it will not affect. Usually, it will not affect the demand of the product. Another factor which is also determining the elasticity is the time period allowed following a price change. The demand tends to be more price elastic the longer the time that we allow consumers to respond to a price change by varying their purchasing directions or decisions. In the short run, the demand may be inelastic because it takes time for consumers both to notice and then to respond to price fluctuations. If someone is driving a car and reaching in between the destination and the home, at that time the person heard that the price of petrol increased suddenly, the person will not sell the car. The person will consume the same amount, but next time person will avoid using personal transportation, prefer to use the public transportation. So the time availability is also very important. Another factor is whether the good is subject to the habitual consumption. When this occurs, the consumers become much less sensitive to the price of the good in question. Examples such as this. When this occurs, the consumer becomes much less sensitive to the price of the good in question. Examples such as the cigarettes and alcohol and other drugs come into this category, that whatever the price there rises, most of the times people prefer, to consume the same amount of the good. Another factor which is determining the demand is the peak and off-peak demand. The demand tends to be price inelastic at peak times, means when there is a peak in the peak hours. At that time people, they are not responding much due to changes in the prices, a feature that suppliers can take advantage of when setting higher prices. Demand is more elastic at off-peak times, leading to lower price for consumers. Consider, for example, the charges made by car rental firms during the course of a week, or the cheaper deals available at hotels at weekends and away from the high season. Train fares are also higher on Fridays, a peak day for traveling between cities, and also at peak times during the day. The breadth of definition of a good or service. If a good is broadly defined, the demand for petrol or meat demand is often fairly inelastic. But specific brands of petrol or beef are likely to be more elastic following a price change. If you are talking about the product as a whole, just like the food, it will not affect. If you categorize the food, if you talk about the different types of the food, then the price change will affect the buyer's behavior. So these are the demand curves with the different price elasticity of demand. So relatively inelastic demand, you can see here that the price change, the slope of the price change is higher than the slope of the quantity changes. You can even here see there is distance, even you can observe the distance, that the prices are changing more than the quantities are changing. Such kind of the elasticity is called the relatively inelastic demand. And here in this graph you can see that elastic demand, relatively elastic, is compared to that the distance covered by, or the slope of this one, is the change in price is less than the change in quantity demanded. The quantity demanded is changing more as compared to the price. We say that there is an elastic demand. What will be the effect of the elasticity of demand on the total revenue of the producers? You can see that price changes, and the price, if the product has the inelastic demand, then price changes, it will increase the revenue of the firms. If the product has the elastic demand, with increasing the price, the revenue of the firm will fall, because people will react more as compared to the expectations of the sellers. You can also see the tax. The tax, when demand is price elastic, most of the tax is paid by the producer. When the product is demand elastic, means when price, because tax is also included into the price of any product. So when price increase, people buy less, so they have to pay. The sellers have to pay from their pockets, because if they charge more price, people will buy less. And a tax, when demand is price inelastic, most of the tax is paid by the consumer. If the product has inelastic demand, then whatever the tax government impose on the sales or on the income of the seller, then the tax will be paid by the consumer, because then the sellers include the tax into the price, because people, they are not very sensitive to the prices, then most of the price tax is paid by the consumer. The usefulness of the price elasticity of demand for the producers. The firms can use price elasticity of demand estimates to predict. They are using the price elasticity of demand for the prediction purpose, that whether to increase or decrease the price. If they increase the price, what will be the response of the people, and the vice versa. The effect of a change in price on the total revenue and expenditure on a product. It will also help the producers to calculate or to understand that when they change the price, what will be the impact on their revenue. The likely price volatility in a market following unexpected changes in supply. This is important for commodity producers who may suffer big price movements from time to time. So very important for the sellers. The effect of a change in a government indirect tax on price and quantity demanded, and also whether the business is able to pass on some or all the tax on the consumers. Usefulness of the price elasticity of demand for the producers. Information on the price elasticity of demand can be used by a business as part of a policy of price discrimination, also known as yield management. This is where a monopoly supplier decides to charge different prices for the same product to different segments of the market, e.g. peak and off-peak rail travel, or yield management by many of our domestic and international airlines. Thank you for listening my lecture regarding the elasticity of demand. Thank you very much. We will continue our discussion